So we get another look at Starfinder Remaster with Field Test number 2. It just came out on the Paizo blog, and of course, I'll include a link to the blog post, as well as Field Test number 2 information, and probably the StarfinderPlaytest.com website as well. However, they introduced a new class, a healing class, as well as some information about maybe the interoperability between Starfinder and Pathfinder. But my name is Don. I'm trying to be the Sly Strategist, and let's go ahead and get into it. So first, once again, don't sleep on the Paizo blog. There is a blog post up called Field Test number 2, putting the fantasy in science fantasy, and we get an introduction to the Mystic class. Now, the Mystic class looks great, especially for someone like me who likes playing support characters, but it's a class that they're interested in getting more feedback on, so feel free to try and play test it yourself, especially if you do Starfinder. However, it is a spontaneous caster, and it has been exceptionally efficient as a healer. And the interesting thing, and we'll see here in a second, because you can actually download this field test information and get the first 5 levels of the Mystic, at least for this field test. And it has a vitality network, which allows it to share healing and pool hit points, basically, in order to perform this healing, as well as a bunch of other kind of cool things. Now, I'm not going to go too much into the blog post. There's actually not that much to it, and there's a lot more in the field test. So with that, let's go ahead and move on to the field test itself. Now, as always, I'm going to include a link to the blog post as well as a link to this particular field test, and probably to the Starfinder playtest website as well, which is starfinderplaytest.com. However, you can go ahead and download this and look at it yourself. It is the second field test, and it is the second installment. So going to kind of scroll through and go over some of the things that I found pretty interesting. Now, they do have a great moving forward section here, which I do like. And as you can see, I've highlighted things that I found kind of interesting. And you can go ahead and read through, and it talks about what they've been doing and what they've seen so far. But there are a couple passages that I found very interesting. So let's go ahead and kind of cover this first one here. And I'm pretty much going to read it. So basically, it kind of says, let us be clear. Starfinder 2nd Edition is not an expansion for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Both games are independent from one another, and the Starfinder 2nd Edition is simply using the core rules engine that powers Pathfinder. For the upcoming Starfinder playtest rulebook, we plan to reference material in the Pathfinder rulebooks, mostly to save playtesters a bunch of reprinted information so we can fit more unique Starfinder content outside of the core rules engine into the playtest. Beyond that, when Starfinder 2nd Edition launches in 2023, the rulebooks will be fully standalone and won't require any Pathfinder books to work. Now, this particular thing makes me think that maybe we won't get that joint Starfinder Pathfinder AP that we have been dreaming of, and by we, I mean I have been dreaming of, but I think it would be very cool, and it is possible, even if they don't do something along those lines, to kind of homebrew something, because the rules are going to be very similar, if not the same. But once again, that is something, it's a little caveat to what I personally had been thinking. Now, there are some other things, and that they talk a little bit about what the specific changes are, and I'll go to this little second highlighted passage here. And that is, one of the ways that the two games strongly differentiate themselves is something we're calling the meta state of the game. In Starfinder, the goal is to promote a stronger focus on ranged combat, which the team thinks is integral to a system where every class is assumed to be toting around a ranged weapon of some variety. This immediately changes several assumed states for the game and makes for a variety of interesting class dynamics. So, as opposed to a Pathfinder type game where you do have your frontliners and your ranged and all of this kind of stuff, this is more geared towards range combat. Not saying that frontliners don't exist or that frontline combat isn't going to happen. However, everyone, if not specialized, is going to have something that is specific to range. So, once again, interesting, as well as different combat styles between Pathfinder and Starfinder. So keep that in mind if you're thinking about doing a homebrew of the two systems. And then we get into some more information about field test number 2. And once again, I'm not going to read everything. I just want to highlight some of the things that I found very specifically interesting. So with that, the third thing that we have written there is our goal with the second edition Mystic is to design a healing, spontaneous spellcaster that stands apart from other classes in the niche, while also having a strong focus on bonding with allies and forming connections with people and the wider setting, both narratively and mechanically. So this is a very specific niche that they're going for with the spontaneous spellcaster and this vitality network, which we're going to see in the upcoming pages. And right here, we get a really, really good look at Chick Chick, the iconic for the Mystic, and fantastic artwork as always. But just wanted to highlight that. But once again, you can go ahead and download this and look at it yourself. So let's go on to the Mystic class. Now we can look at the normal type of class attributes that it has, and the key attribute is going to be wisdom, which makes sense, and the hit points are 8 plus your constitution modifier. There are a bunch of little elements here that talk about what you'd be doing with combat encounters, protecting your bonded allies and defeating your enemies in social encounters while exploring downtime. You might, and others probably. Now those are all the sections they normally do, and I'll leave those to read yourself because they do, to me, add a lot of flavor, but they aren't necessarily that important to the overall scheme and what we're looking at. So we do have the advancement levels down here, and this is for the first 5 levels. Nothing really out of the ordinary. There are some things that are going to seem new, like Connection and Mystic Bond, Vitality Network, and a little bit about the Mystic spellcasting and the spell repertoire. But everything else is pretty normal to what you'd see in a class advancement. The only thing, and it isn't even interesting in that it's odd, but just to highlight, it is a wisdom as the key attribute, so they are going to be, as you would think, an expert in will saves. Now, as we scroll down a little bit, you'll see I have a lot more highlights going on, so we can go ahead and kind of look at those real quick. So one of the first things I thought that was very interesting was the Mystic Bond. So with the Mystic Bond, you're basically using a connection to form a bond between the Mystic themselves and the others in their party or others that they want in the bond. So it is basically to form the bond. It's an experience that is going to vary from Mystic to Mystic, and this is more flavor, but it uses a 10-minute activity related to this bond, and you can maintain a bond with up to 10 other willing creatures, and the bond lasts until you or the bonded creature are no longer willing to be part of the bond. So you can break it off as well as the other creature can break it off. You are going to be considered part of your own bond, which is kind of obvious. Now, the one thing I thought that was interesting about that is, does that count against the 10 or not? That I don't know. So the Mystic will also know the general distance and direction towards other bonded creatures and any conditions affecting them, which I think, especially that second part, any conditions affecting them, is super interesting, because there are times that I have seen in some of the recent adventures with myself as a player where I was the healer and I didn't know that the person had a disease of some sort. But that gets a little bit more into the narrative than the mechanics, as we don't know quite that much about it. But let's go ahead and continue on here. So the next thing is the Vitality Network. So with your Vitality Network, you can basically support the whole network with vital energy that is the thing that connects everybody in your bond. It has a maximum capacity equal to 6 plus 4 hit points per level that you have. And then there is the transfer vitality action that you can use to take hit points out of the network and then redistribute them through yourself or your allies for healing. Now, life or death situations help you strengthen your bond with your allies. And basically, at the start of each of your turns, your Vitality Network is going to get back 4 hit points. If you're a master, it's 6. If you're legendary, it's 8. And your Vitality Network regains all of the hit points when you refocus. Now, let's talk a little bit about the transfer vitality action. So it is a single action with the concentrate, healing, and mystic traits. And this means that you can transfer any number of hit points from your Vitality Network into yourself or to one of your bonded creatures that you can see. The key there is it has to be something that you can see. Now we'll talk a little bit about spellcasting. Not too much. Once again, if you read it, it kind of comes across pretty much it is a mystic spellcasting. It is spontaneous, so each day you can cast up to 3 first rank spells. You must know spells to cast them, and you learn them via the spell repertoire class feature. The number of spells you can cast each day is called your spell slots. So nothing really super big out of there. And as you increase in your level as Mystic, your number of spells per day increases, as does the highest rank that you can cast. Now that, I believe, is shown, we'll bring it up here right now, but you can see what your spells per day goes as you level. So that is part of the document as well. And then from there, let's move on to the next page, which is the spell repertoire. Once again, nothing super earth-shattering here, but I just thought I'd highlight this one section. So the spell repertoire is the collection of spells that you can cast. First level, it's 2 first rank spells of your choice and 4 cantrips, fairly normal, as well as an additional spell and a cantrip from your connection. And we're going to get to the connections here in a second. So you choose these from common spells from the tradition, and for this it's either going to be divine or primal, or from other spells from that tradition to which you have access. You can cast any spell in your spell repertoire by using a spell slot of the appropriate spell rank. So nothing really major out of there. One thing I did kind of want to talk about is Mental Bond and Absolute Bond. So Mental Bond is a 3rd level feat, and it basically states that creatures bonded by your mystic connection can communicate telepathically, which I think is super interesting. So as long as 2 bonded creatures are in the same planetary body and both are alive or functional, I guess in the case of undead, or maybe androids, or robots, I don't play Starfinder, so I'm not entirely sure, but as long as they are both alive or functional, they remain aware of one another's present state, general direction, distance from one another, and conditions affecting them that they themselves are also aware of. So that's super interesting. For example, a bonded ally unaware of a disease or poison affecting them means their bonded allies do not know of these diseases either. And you gain the Absolute Bond action. Absolute Bond action is a single action with the concentrate and mental trait, and you can concentrate your telepathy towards a bonded ally to invite them into a temporary understanding of your connection. And then if the next action you use is to cast a spell or one of more bonded allies would be affected, you choose one. Either the spell only affects one bonded target or the spell does not affect one of the bonded targets. So this allows you to either select or remove people from the next spell. If the next action you use only affects the bonded ally and transfers or reduces hit points from your vitality network, your vitality network regains 4 of those lost hit points. Master is 6, legendary is 8. So this is an interesting way to kind of open this up and see some new things. And I find that really interesting as far as a trait. Now, one other thing I want to talk about here, and we're kind of getting to it, is the key terms. So spell shape, this is a way for you to modify. Spell shape is going to be a trait. And basically, these are actions that can tweak your skills. So if it has the trait, that means the spell can be tweaked. But let's cover some of the additional feats that you can pick. Now, the first one I thought that was interesting was Natural Bond, and the requirements are a primal spellcaster. Now, as a mystic, you can be either primal or divine. So, and you are going to select that in your connection, and that'll be coming after the feats. So you choose one of the following Xeno Druid orders. You become trained in the listed skill associated with the order and add the listed spells to your spell list and spell repertoire as signature spells. So there are basically 4 animal order, and I'm not going to go over every single thing here, but we'll kind of cover the orders. This is for primal, animal order, elemental order, viral order, or plant order. So this is if you wanted your mystic to be a healer, but more in I'm guessing a druidic slant. Super interesting. I think it is anyways. And then we'll go to another one of the feats that I thought that was kind of interesting here, and that was Network Spell. So a Network Spell is a single action feat, 1st level, that has the Concentrate, Mystic, and Spell Shape traits. So when we went over those key terms, this can be modified. So if the next action you use is to cast a spell with an area, range, or target, the spell manifests from one of your bonded allies you can see within 20 feet instead of yourself. So if you wanted to cast a touch heal, you might be able to use another person who is standing next to the person you want to heal as that particular starting point of the spell. Or if you wanted to cast a fireball, you could use one of your bonded allies in order to be the center point of it. I feel sorry for that bonded ally, but it is something that you can do. And you use the ally space to determine the source of the spell, including range, line of sight, and line of effect. Super interesting. Another one I thought was kind of cool is Divine Disciple. This is if you, once again, have selected through your connection to be a divine spellcaster and worship a deity. This is where you gain harm or heal, and this is where you can become sanctified. So I thought that was kind of a cool one here. Once again, down here, you become sanctified, gaining the holy or unholy trait depending on your deity. So it is a way to become sanctified in Starfinder Remaster, and I believe that's the first mention we heard of sanctification as far as the Starfinder Remaster goes. Another one I thought that was really, really cool because this takes place in a lot of different animes and movies and fantasy and things like that is cloud storage. It's extra dimensional and it's a mystic trait, feat level 4. And you can use your vitality network as an extra dimensional storage space. So you can interact with an item that weighs 1 bulk or less, and you can stow it in your space. And it basically allows that as long as your vitality network contains at least 1 hit point, an ally in your bond can remove an item from your extra dimensional space as an interact action, reducing the remaining hit points in your vitality network by the bulk. So it's always going to be at least 1. Your extra dimensional space has a capacity of 12 bulk, and then the bulk size for individual items I didn't see goes up. However, expert or higher in your connection skills, it goes to 25, 50 for master, and 75 bulk at legendary. So I think it's almost like having a bag of holding, except it's part of your vitality network instead of a physical thing. Another one I thought that was really cool is this mental interference here. Mental interference is a single action, feat level 4 with mental and mystic traits. If you are wielding a range weapon within 1 range increment of an opponent or a melee weapon within reach, and your vitality network has at least 4 hit points, you can overload the target's senses by flooding their mind with your connection's power channeled through your weapon. And you reduce the hit points of your vitality network by 4. And the save for this will be the will DC of the target. So once again, another really interesting feat. And what you're trying to do is dazzle and off guard the target. With critical success, the target becomes dazzled and off guard until the start of your next turn. The success is the same as the critical success, except the target becomes dazzled and off guard until the end of your turn. So the difference is in the length. Now, here is where we get into connections. So connections are basically your connection to wherever you get your power from. And you can choose one of 2 ways. You can choose healing. And if you choose healing, you're in tune with a vast tapestry of universal life energy that binds all living things. And this gives you the divine spellcasting condition. And the connection skill that you get is going to be medicine. So you do get trained in medicine. The spells you get for cantrip are analyze target. First level, motivating ringtone, which we're going to get to here in a second. I love that one, actually. Second is False Vitality, and third is Vampiric Feast. Connection spells is Vitalize, and the Harmony is whenever you cast a healing spell on a bonded ally that restores them to their maximum hit points, your vitality network regains the excess hit points the spell could have restored. Up to your character level, temporary hit points do not trigger the Harmony. So this is a way for you to kind of restore your vitality network. And then the second connection is Rhythm. So with Rhythm, it is basically a primal spellcasting tradition. Your connection skill is Performance. Granted spells cantrip is Summon Instrument. First is Sonic Scream. Second is Noise Blast. And third is Enthrall. Your connection spell is Song of the Spheres. And Harmony is when a bonded creature's hit points are restored using Transfer Vitality, they gain a +1 status bonus to attack rolls and damage rolls until the end of their next turn. If your transfer vitality affects multiple bonded allies, you can select only 1 target for this benefit. So it won't cover everybody within your network, only 1 person that you select. And then we can go through some of the spells. I'm not going to cover too much. The 2 that I kind of really wanted to cover because I found them very interesting, was Doom Scroll, mainly because I love the name. 2 actions, second level spell, Traditions, Arcane, Divine Occult. So you would have to, once again, we go up to our connections, you would have to be a healing connection and not a rhythm connection. But the range is 60 feet, and the area is a 15-foot burst. Defense is a will save, and duration is sustained for up to a minute. And that sustained for up to a minute, if you've remembered the play test from Pathfinder, that seems kind of what they're going for. You magically broadcast grim news onto nearby devices, screens, and other displays, including comms units on armor. Creatures in the area who see one or more displays must attempt a will save. So it is literally doom scrolling like some of us do on social media. Critical success, the creature is unaffected. Success, the creature is fascinated by the display. Failure, the creature is fascinated by the display and frightened too, even if the fascination ends. In a critical failure, they are fascinated by the display, frightened 3, and doomed 1, even if the fascination ends. So that seems a fairly powerful spell for second level. And then motivating ringtone. Once again, I love this one. 2 actions, first level spell, auditory, concentrate, emotion, healing, manipulate, mental, and subtle trait. The more traits something has, to me, the more resistances that could work. Like the mental one is a tough one if the creature doesn't have a mind, but it's understandable. Traditions, occult, primal. So this is a healing if you chose rhythm instead of healing for your connection. Requirements, you have a comms unit used as a locus and the target's contact info. So you basically have to have their phone number. Range is 120 feet. Target's 1 comm unit. Duration is 1 minute. You cause the target comm unit to play a cosmically composed personal theme song specific to its owner. So it is literally that theme song when you go into a room. Creature who owns the target regains 1d10 plus 4 hit points when you cast the spell and gains a 5-foot status bonus to all speeds and a +1 status bonus to saves against fear effects for the duration, as long as the comm unit continues to play the ringtone. And you can heighten it as well, where the healing increases by 1d10 plus 4. So I just think that's a fantastic spell. You can do a lot of flavor. You can make it serious. You can make it funny. You could make it play Never Gonna Give You Up. And that could be the ringtone that they have to listen to while they're being healed. And if one of my players use something like that, I would put it on a sound pad or something like that so I could go ahead and play it. But there are other spells on here. Once again, I don't want to say that they're not cool. I don't want to say that they're not fantastic. I don't want to say that you might see something there that I didn't. But these are the things that I have highlighted as what I find very interesting in this field test. Now, Starfinder itself looks like it's shaping up to be a really exciting rewrite of the rules. There are a bunch of spells that are super interesting. They're introducing some fantastic classes that are different takes on things than I have even seen within Pathfinder. So it looks like it might be just expanding what we can play, and I absolutely love that. So I do hope you like this little look at the field test number 2, and if you did, feel free to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. But whatever you do, I hope you have a great day and happy adventuring. Thanks.